All right, welcome to this conversation. It's Kim Marsh here, founder of the Open Book Company, and I'm super excited to be chatting today with you. DeShannon Barnes-Bowens, you are the founder of Ilera, and you work as a spiritual psychotherapist, professional development trainer, and a writer, which is how we met. Through your work with Ilera, you do amazing work, workshops, programs, written content, all focusing on topics like spiritual injury, sexuality, vicarious trauma, sustainable self care, and well being. This important work is a beautiful contribution to our world. I'm so grateful to have you sharing a little bit about your work, about your most recent ebook, and some of the amazing things that you have going on. So, thank you for being here, Shannon. Great to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me, Kim.
So I'm going to break our conversation up into two parts. First, I want to talk about your most recent book, and then I want to talk a little bit about the writing process so we can peel back the curtain a little bit and hear about the process of writing that book. Before we do, I do want to give a little shout out to your very first book, which I have here in my hands and you have there on the shelf behind you. Hush Hush, an African American family breaks their silence on sexuality and sexual abuse. This is your first contribution. And most recently, you have published an ebook, which is why I can't hold it up, but check it out online, everyone. It is called Reclaiming Wholeness, Identifying and Healing Spiritual Injury. A really beautiful and powerful book with illustrative examples of spiritual injury and resources and support for people who are working on identifying and healing from spiritual injury. I would love to jump in to talk a little bit about what this latest book, Reclaiming Wholeness, represents for you. Why was it important for this topic and for this book to be your next book after Hush Hush?
Thank you for the question. Well, what was interesting is that spiritual injury is something that I had been working on just in my spiritual psychotherapy practice. And I also used to be co-director of a seminary in New York City. And this was something that we also, over time, realized that we needed to address in the seminary setting with our students because they were going to go out and be of service in multiple ways in the world. I never had thought about it being a book, though, Kim. It was just something that I did in group setting. It was something that I worked on with people in one on one. It just kept coming up over and over again. Then a shift happened, the pandemic, COVID
Mm,
19. During that time when people got still, I feel like something slowed down and things that people had been ignoring were starting to bubble up. And because these things were starting to bubble up, because it gave people more time to go within, many therapists, not just myself, started getting more calls, outreach, people wanting support. And over again, there was this through line running across most of the people who reached out to me. They were inquiring about spirituality and questioning life, wanting to use that to go within and heal. And as I would listen to stories of folks, it was really clear that spiritual injury was happening in everybody's lives, whether they knew that was what it was or not, because I don't think that most people have a clear understanding of what spiritual injury is. So I said, all right, I need to put something out and I need to address communities who have often been ignored because most of the people reaching out to me were people of color,
mm,
people who were practicing non mainstream religions, and people who were practicing indigenous African and earth based religions.
mm. So you mentioned, thank you for that. You mentioned that a lot of people didn't know or didn't identify that it was spiritual injury, but you saw this through line. And I will tell you, I had heard the term spiritual abuse before reading your book and before working with you on this project, but I had not heard the term spiritual injury. Can you give a brief overview of what that is so we can educate more people as to the definition and the context for it?
Absolutely. So, first, I'm going to give a very, very simple definition of spiritual injury, and then I'll break it down in terms of some of the components. So, at its core, when spiritual injury happens, this is some act or offense that impacts an individual and it cuts them off from the sacred within themselves. It damages that relationship, or it cuts them off, or it damages their relationship to what they consider sacred or divine outside of themselves.
Mm.
So say that again. Something that hurts, cuts off, damages the relationship that an individual has with oneself. And the reason that that is so important is because who we are is sacred and divine. We are sacred. So when something causes harm, that is a spiritual injury.
Mm.
And it can also be an action that happens to a person that impacts, harms, disrupts their relationship to what they consider divine. Now, how can this show up? It can show up as a loss of faith, a loss of belief in whatever your spiritual philosophy is in life, whatever your spiritual belief is. It can show up as behaviors that have been directed towards you or towards a particular group that you belong to that's damaging. And it can disrupt how you make sense of your world. It can give it disruption can happen in connection to what gives you meaning in life. So those are just some of the few ways that spiritual injury can show up.
Thank you for that. And I would love to hear a little bit about what you would like your readers to take away from this powerful resource. We now know a little bit more about what spiritual injury is and how it can show up. And what is your hope that people can learn from your teachings and your wisdom?
Well, the first thing is that if spiritual injury has happened to you, once you get a real sense of what it is and how it can influence your life, that you're not alone. Spiritual injury, there's no research that I came across because, as you said, there's a lot of stuff out there on spiritual abuse, not necessarily spiritual injury. But I believe that it's happened to all of us. If we're living and breathing, if we're interacting with other human beings, any of us has experienced a spiritual injury. It's just one of those things that's going to happen. So you're not alone. However, the degree and the impact is different from each individual. So once you've read this work, and I do hope that you purchase and read the work, reach out to people. Really use the resources that I've provided, reach out to folks, and reclaim your relationship with yourself. Reclaim your relationship with what is divine and sacred to you so that you can move in the world in your full authenticity and power. Because nobody outside of you has the right to tell you who you are and how you should move in the world. You know you best. So I want people to take that. I want people to know they have permission to live their life in their fullness and on purpose.
I need to listen and replay this back to myself every morning. This is such a beautiful reminder for all of us. And you talk and use this term reclaiming. The title of the book, Reclaiming Wholeness, it just perfectly suits what you're aiming to do and what readers are able to do after they've taken in and been able to go through this work. So thank you for all of that. I want to transition a little bit now from the content itself and the book itself to the process of writing this
Okay.
book. Um, we talked a little bit about how you knew it was time and what was coming up for you as to the message that, okay, it's time for this to be a book. Um, I'd love to talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that you experienced or any potential blocks that you might have had as you were going through the writing process and sitting down and either beginning or continuing on this journey.
Oh, there are a few. How much time do you have? Actually, there's several, maybe a dozen. Okay, so I've given some thought to this. The first is that because this was going to be a short ebook, I had to do my research. This was also my first ebook. So I had all sorts of doubt coming up like, but I've always done print. This is a
Mm-hmm.
short ebook. Should I do a short ebook? Is a short ebook really a book? Again,
Mm.
because of comparing it with my first offering. So those what I call gremlin thoughts coming up. So that was one thing that I had to work through. The second was deadline. In my mind, I had an idea of when it was going to come out. And I actually remember talking to you before I came into the open book company. And I remember when I had said my date to you for a draft, and you were like, okay, I don't know if you remember that, but the tone in your voice, what I inferred was like, she may be trying to push it a little bit
Mm.
too fast instead of letting it breathe and
Mm.
re-engaging with an actual book and not an article, because I've written articles and all of that. I forgot what that process was like, to go slow, to let things simmer and marinate. So when something is longer than 1,500 words and encapsulated in what a particular person wants for their anthology or their website. So I had to get back into the groove of writing and trusting the process of listening to my own voice. And then the third thing that I'll share in terms of a challenge and obstacle was actually the publishing process. And again, because this was an ebook, this was my first time, I had a lot of learning to do in terms of the different platforms. And then things were moving slower than I realized that they would move. And so I would get frustrated and, oh, I wanted the book out this month. But at the end of the day, working through those challenges and dealing with temporary obstacles actually made me stronger. And it's going to make the next offering that I do easier. So those were some of the
Beautiful.
challenges.
Beautiful. I love that, the little gremlins.
Yes. Yeah.
They are there for all of us. They might look a little bit different, but they are there for all of us for sure. Thank you for sharing those challenges. Very real, very relatable, very felt. One of the things that you did to address some of these challenges, you joined the open book group coaching experience. And we had an opportunity then to work together and to be in community and space with other authors who were working on their books at the same time. What was that experience like for you coming into that container?
It was wonderful. Like truly, truly wonderful. Many years ago, I was part of a writers group in Brooklyn. And that was my first time having the experience of reading my work aloud and listening to other people. And so I was like, oh my gosh, when I heard about this opportunity, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I need. And all of the information that you shared actually helped prep me for diving back in. So turning within and listening to that voice, and then being aside other people who are in different parts of this country and also other countries.
Mhm.
That was amazing. An international community of writers, people with different goals. Not everybody's working on the book. Some people are just working on different pieces for different reasons, but really witnessing. I hadn't had the opportunity to witness and listen to other people in many years. So that was a gift. And the conclusion of it, when we got to share, that was as they say, the chef's kiss.
Well, that being witnessed, like you said, there's something really powerful in that. And the writing process is a really solitary process by definition. You're kind of going off in your corner and, working on your project, whatever you're working on. And there is power in being able to bear witness to each other and to bear witness to the vulnerability and the work of others. So I'm glad that you had that beautiful experience, and it was wonderful to have you with us and adding to that space for sure. I want to wrap us up now to ask you if you can think of something you might share. If you could go back in time and talk to DeShannon at the beginning of this process and the beginning, you had this idea, okay, I'm going to write this ebook. Is there anything that you would want to share with your past self about the writing process, the publishing process, the experience that you're going to be bringing into your next project?
Absolutely. The first is that temporary obstacles are temporary,
Mm, mm.
even if they're coming from my own mind. Like the thought, I can just witness the thought, the gremlin thought, and then chase that gremlin thought out of my consciousness so I can refocus on my objective. I would remind myself to stay connected to my heart and why the work is important and why this work was important at this time. Like there's a reason that you're doing this. Remember, writing is probably your first love. So continue to nurture what you love. And then I would also remind myself that quality is more important than quantity because of that earlier gremlin that I shared about, oh, is it too short? No, it's not. It's just as it's supposed to be.
Mm. It's just as it's supposed to be. I
Yes,
love that. The message isn't there aren't going to be gremlins. The message isn't when there are no gremlins, that's when you can start. The
that's right.
message is they're going to be there and you can observe, listen to what they have to say, thank them, and move them on their way. Move them on their way.
Absolutely. Let them
I
go have
love
a
that.
party somewhere else.
It's time for your party on the page. Let them go have their party somewhere else. I love that.
Yes, yes.
DeShannon, thank you so much for sharing everything you shared in today's conversation. It was a beautiful opportunity for us to reconnect. It was an honor for me to be alongside you on this journey of publishing Reclaiming Wholeness. And I'm excited to see what comes next.
Oh, thank you. And may I share two things that are coming next?
I would like you to do that. Absolutely, please.
Okay, so the first thing is that I'm actually working on a reflective guidebook. So that will be coming out this fall to be a companion to the ebook so that people are actually able to work through a process. And it's going to come out just in time for an event that I'm having this fall with my colleague, the lovely Reverend Dr. Iya Salome Rahim. She and I, we teamed up to do a spiritual injury and family constellations offering. So it's been our offering, we did it this spring. It was a transformative success. So we're talking about healing and reclaiming the power of our ancestral lineages through healing spiritual injury and working with family constellations. So that is coming up this fall. And we're going to try this one online. It'll be Saturday, October 24th. And if you go to ilera.com, ilera.com, the details for registration will be there. We're working on the flyer right now as we speak.
Fantastic. I'm going to drop a link to that with the video so people can check it out. And I'm going to check it out as soon as we end our conversation. Um, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for all of your contributions. It's an honor to know you, to journey alongside you on your writing process, and can't wait to continue the journey together. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Kim.